let me introduce our speaker. Dr. Po-Shen Loh is a social entrepreneur and inventor working across the spectrum of mathematics, education, and healthcare all around the world. He is a math professor at Carnegie Mellon University and the national coach of the USA International Math Olympiad. He has pioneered innovations ranging from a scalable way to learn challenging math live online, a comparable engagement to live streaming entertainment, to a new way to control pandemics by leveraging self-interest. As an academic, Po-Shen has earned distinctions ranging from an IMO silver medal to the U.S. Presidential Early Career Award for scientists and engineers. His scientific research considers a variety of questions that lie at the intersection of combinatorics, probability theory, and computer science. As an educator, he was the coach of Carnegie Mellon University's math team when it achieved its first ever #1 rank among all North American universities, and the coach of the USA Math Olympiad team when it achieved its first ever back-to-back #1 rank victories in 2015 and 2016, and then again in 2018 and 2019. So for our talk this afternoon, we will have maybe a 1 hour talk, and we'll have a 5-minute break in between, and then we'll continue again, and then we'll entertain questions at the end. So let's welcome Professor Po-Shen Loh.
Thank you. It's nice to meet all of you. I'd like to know a bit about my audience. How many of you are undergraduate students, so university students? Okay. Are any of you graduate students, like masters or PhD? That's some. Okay. Can I split those? How many are master's students? How about PhD? Okay, we've got a nice mix. Very nice mix. And I see also there's some other people here. How many are faculty or work in this education world? Yes. Okay. Okay. Wow. What a nice mix. Okay. Lots of interesting people. The next thing I'm curious is for the. Let me adjust something. If I want to reduce the volume, this must be. Is it this one? Up here. Up here. The only reason I say that is because I sometimes get excited and talk too loud. I actually think it might be this one. Let me try this. Volume, raise that, and then turn it down, and this is good. Yes. Okay. Yes, that's the one. That's good. Yeah, because let me make it a bit louder. I'm just trying to optimize this so that when I get excited, it doesn't just start, echoing. But I do get excited when I talk. So because otherwise, if I have to be very quiet, I just get bored. Okay. Good. In the back, do you still hear this or no? Yeah. Okay. Very good. So we'll do this. Yes. So now that I know a little bit about the different places that you are in education, I'm a little bit curious for the young people here, young people, but the ones who are in undergraduate. Do you mind sharing what you want to do eventually? Anyone want to share or no? I'm just very curious. There's no wrong answers here. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make the talk as useful as possible for people. I got to know some of the professionals, the faculty and professionals earlier about chit-chatting. So I know a little bit about what they do. Does anyone else want to share what you at least major in, or okay, you major in math, that's clear. But what you want to do? Yeah.
For me, actually, I eventually go to the academy and explore. Use the mic. Sorry.
Oh, there's a mic. Mic is off. We can fix that.
Actually, for me, I wanted to eventually go to postgraduate first and explore more about math in the deepest level, and at the same time, trying to help others in improving math and help them appreciate it as much as possible.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, that's nice. I appreciate that. So basically, further studying math, and then you want to be like some of the other faculty and professionals here who are advancing math further while also helping more people to advance in math. Again, there's no wrong answers here. Are there any other people interested in other things? Or is this basically everyone trying to go towards academia? That's actually what I'm trying to understand. Because when I give talks to audiences, there's different ways I can slap this up. Go on to this. Okay, let's do this. Sometimes students don't want to answer. Maybe let me just ask for the faculty. What does the typical undergraduate student do? Does basically every undergraduate field go on to PhD and then go to be professor? No, I don't think so, because that's not true in any university I've ever been at. So I'm just a little curious. And by the way, I respect that maybe some people don't feel like saying, which is okay. Then I just want to have an estimate of the profile. Is there anyone here on the faculty who can maybe share what are things that many of the undergraduates who study math, what they try to go towards? Anyone want to share? Yes, let's do it. Because then we'll be more specific this time.
So since people are shy, I think maybe a good estimate would be 50% will go to the actuarial industry, or 40%, 30% will be in IT and banks and finance. And then maybe around 15% to 20% will go to graduate studies.
Okay, thank you. And that's about right. That sounds about right. And the reason I say that is because if you even think of this is interesting. You said about 10% go on to faculty. Yeah. This sort of makes sense because if you think about it, the ratio between the number of professors and the number of students is not 1-to-1. So if every student goes on to become professor, there's something in math called the pigeonhole principle, and it will not be possible. But in some sense, the 10% going on to graduate studies, that seems to make sense because after you finish graduate studies, there's still a drop-off of about a factor of 10, depending on whether you eventually choose to become professor. Maybe something like that. And so that's about right. The ratio is about right. Okay, no problem. Fred, today I actually want to give a talk then. Okay. Anyway, in the United States, we also have a situation where a lot of people who study math, some of them want to go on into graduate studies, some of them want to go on into finance and banking and so on. But I also coach the U.S. National Math Olympiad team. So some people might be curious, what do you do when you coach the U.S. National Math Olympiad team? Well, let me explain. When any of the faculty, and when I, as a faculty, teach regular students, the way it works is we teach students. When you coach the U.S. National Math team, the students teach you. They know everything. Okay? So what I usually do with students who are very strong is I usually try to say, there is another direction you can go into. Because by the way, all these jobs that have been mentioned, they are jobs, we've heard of them before, but some of the most interesting jobs are the ones that don't exist yet, or the ones that we have not thought of. This is actually what the whole world of innovation, entrepreneurship is. I'm a little curious, in this university, how much of a culture of startup company formation is there? Is there? Not really? Not really. That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to plant a few seeds. If that's okay. I want to plant a few seeds. All right? Because I actually, by the way, never expected that I would do anything other than go on to be a professor. That's sort of originally where the path I was on was. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I didn't know what I would do, but for a long time in my career, I thought that was the thing I would do. And eventually today, I'm doing a lot of very strange stuff involving creating new things. And for example, that's why I'm even here in the Philippines right now. Okay? But a lot of this was inspired by having been able to see up close somebody else who was actually legitimately another math science person who had gone on to use their skills to go and create something else. That influenced me a lot. Actually, I'll tell you a bit about that experience. It's because when I was in university, I used to go and exercise at the gym to lift weights. Not anymore. But I used to, okay? But actually, I didn't look that strong anyway. When I did, I went to lift weights at the gym because that was a good way to chat with your friends who are lifting weights with you. And you lift a few weights and you chat a lot more. Anyway, one of these guys that I went with, he was interesting. He did a lot of computer programming contests. In fact, he and I both did lots of programming contests together. He eventually went on, and I went to do my master's degree. I went to study math. He went on and joined a startup company. Oh boy, we didn't know what those, I didn't really know what those were back in 2004, 2005. And the company he joined it really early. So early that at that company, they were still in a house. They didn't have an office yet. It was really risky. And furthermore, that company, all they did is they had something where you could poke friends. 2004, 2005, the company he joined was a company whose main feature was to poke friends. And I thought this is silly. Why do I want to join this company? You know what that company is? Oh, by the way, he was the first chief technology officer of that company. Does anyone know what company that is? Facebook. Facebook. He was the first CTO of Facebook. Okay, and then he got tired of doing that, and he wanted to create his own. And he didn't want to be the first CTO. He didn't want to be the chief technology officer. He wanted bigger challenges. By the way, this is a math science guy, okay? This is a math science guy. Then he decided to go start his own thing. Because he said, there are all these people who search for things around, and then there are all these people who, they find the answers to their questions. But it would be very nice if you could just collect all the answers to all the questions somehow. So he started a website to do that. Have you heard of a website starting with a Q? Quora. Yeah, he's the founder of Quora. He runs that. That's like $1 billion company. So I'm just explaining, oh, by the way, the fun thing about this guy, he never cared about the money. He just wanted to do interesting things. And to this day, he doesn't care about the money, he just does interesting things. I respect that, by the way. I love it when people don't go for the money and instead just go and say, what is interesting to do, what might have big impact. And if you do big enough thing, yeah, you'll have enough money. That's the mentality that I think makes sense. Some people's mentality is, just give me the money now. Those people look for shortcuts. And then somehow you don't get what you really want. But I'm just saying these things because, for me, my pathway got very influenced by that. And in some sense, why I'm here talking to you is that I want to share with you some ideas that I think you also think of something. Because, by the way, I'm just like an actor. I am actually a guy who just studied math and somehow accidentally found myself going into other places and picking up certain skills that maybe some of you will get interested in, pick up the skills, and you never know what you'll do. Okay. So now let me tell you some stories. Because this is not going to be a math seminar where I'm just telling you math facts. I'm actually going to tell you stories about my pathway, like creating some things. Okay? And maybe someday some of you will create some things in some size too. The story starts from something silly. 3 years ago, there was some news running around that some math professor found an easier way to teach how to solve quadratic equations than every textbook out there. And this even made the New York Times. Actually, that was me. Yes. So now that's silly. Okay, there are real mathematicians here. All right, that is actually trivial. If you look deeply into this, it's completely trivial. And in fact, the thing about it is it's a different way of looking at it that makes it easier to understand. However, what I learned from this is the way to get math in the New York Times is not to prove something really hard, because New York Times will never write about it. No one will understand. Instead, you do something that's involving everybody. Quadratic equations. Every single person in the entire world has to learn how to solve quadratic equations, right? That's part of the curriculum in the entire world. So, bam, New York Times material. Okay, look to any of you, if you want to show up in the New York Times, make sure what you do is something that touches everybody. All right, but that's not the point. The point is, after this happened, it went all over this news, and in fact, even got to the point where the Prime Minister of Singapore posted about it on his social media. I said, wow, there's a leader of a country posting on social media about quadratic equations. That was December 2019. At that time, I mean, the President of the United States was also a very active social media user. His name was Donald. But he never posted about quadratic equations. So I wanted to know, who is this Prime Minister of Singapore? So I looked up, I did some searching, because I'm not familiar so much with Southeast Asia and how everything lines up, so I didn't know about his background. I looked him up. Do you know what the Prime Minister of Singapore studied in college? Do you know what he majored in? Computer science is close, but that actually wasn't really a subject back then. Computer science came from math. He was actually a math major. Maybe that's what you said? No. Anyway, computer science and math, that's close because most of modern computer science is offshoots of mathematics. Actually, where I work at Carnegie Mellon University, our computer science department is one of the world's most famous ones. And it is actually a former sub-department of math that split up. So that's basically the same thing. Okay, he studied math. He actually studied math at Cambridge. And furthermore, at Cambridge, he was the #1 ranked math student. He's a math genius. I didn't know that before. That's amazing. So that just came into my head of, oh, okay, interesting. There's a Singaporean Prime Minister, he's a math genius. And then at that point, I stopped thinking about quadratic equations because the timeline is that all of this stuff happened up until this article is February 2020. By March 2020, I was thinking about something else. Can anyone guess what might have happened in March 2020? COVID. I was just thinking about that. And I ended up deciding to switch my direction to go and work on pandemic control. I was lucky. The way that my university works and many universities work is that after working for a few years, you have this thing called tenure, which means that you can then go and do whatever you think is interesting to work on. And so I decided I'm going to switch over and think about how I can use math to control pandemics, because we are in a pandemic right now, and this is kind of important. The other reason I decided to do it, and this is related to innovation, is I said, you see, the area of math that I work in is called network theory. Network theory, I don't have to do hand signals because we are in a proper classroom with a blackboard. Network theory is where you think about pictures that look like this. This is a network. It's just a bunch of dots connected by a bunch of lines, and we just think about this all day. So this is what I worked on, and I said, networks. Well, disease spreads on a network. It's on a network of people. Second thing I thought about, this is the first pandemic that there are smartphones. That's a true statement. This is the first pandemic that there are smartphones, right? The last pandemic, 1915, whatever, it was not smartphones, they had dumb phones. Like phones that you used to make phone calls. Not these things that you have the phone app to. Okay, so the thing is that I said this is the first one with the smartphone. So maybe we should think about, with research, think about the right way to use smartphones to control pandemics. That's what I decided to think about. By the way, when you think about innovation, the key things that are in that analysis are the answers to why me, or why us, and why now. If you want to come up with something new, you need to have good answers for why us and why now. What were the answers to why us? Is because, well, there is a network theory. That's the angle that we have some expertise in, as well as, I'm also working at a university, one of the top in computer science, so we can make any app we want to make. Okay, that's the why us. Actually, I should be careful. You don't have to be the top in anything to make it. You just have to have people around who can make it. That's the important detail. All of you can also do all kinds of things, but that doesn't have to be top. Whatever. So then, that was the why us. And the why now was there hasn't been a smartphone around pandemic thing before, so let's think about it. And to cut to the chase, over the course of about a year and a half, the team that I built and I led ended up inventing a new way to fight pandemics. Actually, this thing got so big that it even reached a point all the way by the end where even the person at the US White House in charge of handling future pandemics reached out to us. So this is actually went all the way. In fact, I ended up giving talks about this at places like research group meeting of the Harvard School of Public Health, and at there was a conference run by something called IEEE. IEEE is the biggest professional society for electrical engineers and computer scientists worldwide. So this is real. In fact, I'll tell you a bit about this. This is actually a research thing. So that's the next part. So what is this innovation? Turns out it's really trivial actually. It's really simple. But in fact, you can see the theme of what I'm saying here is most of my innovations are very easy observations, but then executed. I want to make that clear. It's that some of the best successes in the world sometimes come from the idea being simple, but you have to do something to make it happen. Right? So over here, what was the concept? Well, what we made is we made a way of controlling pandemics that solves the biggest problem in pandemics called getting everyone to work together. Because by the way, if you want to stop a pandemic, it is easy. Every single person stay home at the exact same time for 6 weeks. Done. Like the entire world. Right? Then we're done. Wouldn't that be so much better than what we did in this city? We all had to stay home for more than 6 weeks total by now. Why didn't we just all stay home for 6 weeks at the beginning and be done? Well, the problem is because the one person cheats. Oh no, rules it for everyone. Okay? So this is called game theory, by the way. This is called game theory. In fact, one of the most famous people behind game theory is a guy named John Nash. There's an area in game theory where you study things called Nash equilibria. John Nash is actually an alumnus of the university that I teach at right now, Carnegie Mellon University. John Nash. So that's why he's a great figure to look up to. Now, how to solve the problem of getting everyone to work together? Well, I said we were doing apps. There are other apps in the world to control pandemics. Actually, all of the other apps are exactly the same, except for ours. Ours is different. This is again what's important when you make something new. It has to be different. Well, let me first compare. Let me say what everyone else does. All the other apps in the world tell you, oh no, you were around somebody last week. Today, that person is sick. So we think you're dangerous and you might get other people sick. So what does the app tell you to do? Stay home, right? Does that make sense? Okay. In the Philippines, is this app mandatory or is it optional? Or do you even have an app? I thought you had an app. Doesn't Google tell you to turn on some app? Oh, can you tell me? No? Yeah, so this guy seems to have an idea. You have to turn the microphone on.
I think there was like an app, but I don't know. It just notified in my phone, like exposure notification.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the right. Yeah, exactly. It's the one that was notified on your phone, probably from Google. It's called exposure notifications, and it said, do you want to turn it on? And it promises you that if you turn it on or not, no one will ever know. And it seems like basically no one turned it on, which is okay. That's the expected thing. Let's go dig in deeper. Why no one turned it on? By the way, this was made all over the world. That was the way the app was. And the reason why, if you think about it, people didn't turn it on. Think about what could possibly go wrong. The app can go wrong. Meaning, why could this thing fail? Right? There's an app where it's completely optional. It's anonymous. No accountability. No consequences. And whenever it tells you to do something, what it's telling you to do is to inconvenience yourself to help strangers. Stay home so you don't get anyone else sick. You know how that ends up failing? If you ask everyone, hey, could you please download an optional, no consequences, no enforcement app that will tell you nothing except occasionally ask you to inconvenience yourself to save strangers. What happens? People just don't use it. Does that make sense? Yes, they just don't use it. Because there are nice people in the world, but unfortunately you cannot have something work on the whole world that way. Oops, that was kind of expensive. I think about there were tens of millions of US dollars, maybe even 100 million US dollars spent worldwide building that. That's how much money went into that. But if you think about it, you use some math. The game theory just tells you the thing's not going to work. Does that make sense? Okay, let me tell you what we made. What we made says ping 3. 3 would mean somebody just got sick. And they frequently spend time with someone who frequently spends time with someone else who frequently spends time with you. Does it make sense what 3 means? 3 is what we call the graph theoretic distance, network theoretic distance. It's the number of steps along this network, where each of these connections means frequently nearby. And each of these dots actually is not a person. It's a person's phone. Okay, so that's what we built. What could this do? So the reason why this is relevant, by the way, maybe I need to take another step back. Why do we care about controlling pandemics? Well, it's because we have now learned in this world that we don't know how to control pandemics. The only strategy used in the entire world at this point is everybody gets sick. Of course, well, by the way, we have vaccines too, but actually, unfortunately, the vaccines, you get vaccinated, I got vaccinated too, but as you know, the vaccines wear off, and then somehow everybody gets sick. That's just like you get vaccinated so you don't really die, right? But still, we don't have good ways of controlling other than just hoping people survive when they get sick. Right, but there are other diseases out there which are actually much more lethal than COVID. Like Ebola, for example. If you get it, that's a 50-50 and you're dead, right? And we're mathematicians here, so just think about it. There was an Ebola outbreak in 2014. That one infected 20,000 people. Half of them died. What kind of function is the growth rate of infection? Exponential? Okay, you're saying, I saw someone say this. This is a very bad sign. Because when this happens, you know what happened? Basically everyone got it, right? So that's a bad thing to happen. But basically it does this. Exponential. If you get to 20,000 infected, the base of your exponential is pretty close to 1. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is something that most people don't think about unless you think about it from a math perspective. Of course, it's not a straightforward exponential. It's got some stochasticity in it, because you know how many people you infect, sometimes more, sometimes less. But on average, what you're multiplying by cannot be 0.7, or else you're just going to die. Or else the curve is going to go down. So actually, that Ebola outbreak of 2014, which is the year we went to Cape Town, right? You were the national coach of the Philippine team that year in Cape Town. Yes, that's right. Really in the back. But we were both in Cape Town, and I was watching that number, because it was very scary. As a mathematician, I was thinking, what's the base of that exponent? It's pretty close to 1. If there's a mutation that causes Ebola to be 50% more infectious, and tick over, you know what's wrong when it's bigger than 1? Whole world gets infected, 50% lethality rate, no cure. Actually, at that time, I don't know how you guys flew to South Africa. We were supposed to change planes in Senegal. Senegal is 1 country away from the Ebola outbreak. I said, no, we are changing tickets. There's no way I'm going to change my planes in Senegal. So we took a non-stop all the way down to Johannesburg. But I'm just explaining that this sort of stuff, this is real. And unfortunately, every single year there's a new variant of Ebola. And if you're wondering, wait, well, I mean, we've never had this problem before, right? Like, why should we be worried now? The reason you should be worried now is because the density of the network of human interactions is growing and growing and growing. Today, the Ebola virus jumps from the village by motorcycle to the major city, by bus to the international airport in New York. But, you know, that's not how it used to be. Like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we would just wipe out the village, and that's it. So that's why we care. By the way, I should say that's why we care, because, oh man, we got lucky with COVID. All right, this new thing we came up with. What does this do in an Ebola outbreak? Optional information. Suppose someone finds out, ping, 8. Somebody just got infected. 8 frequent connections away from you. What if a week later you get a ping, 6, new infection? 6 away from you. And then after the next few days, ping, 5, ping, 4, ping, 4. Each is a new infection. Ping, 3, ping, 2. How about the average person react? What would the average person do? These are each a new person getting sick. They would stay home. Do you have to force them to stay home? No. Wait a second. Why are they staying home? Are they staying home because they're just really nice people that don't want to make anyone else sick from them? No. It's because they don't want to die. We invented the first way of controlling pandemics powered by selfishness. Just help yourself. Because think of what that would do if there's actually this Ebola thing running around. Well, someone gets sick, and then the people who are often around, the ones who are often around them, they're hiding. What does it do to the spread? There's less. Does that make sense? It's less because there are less people around to get infected. By the way, this is something which is an alternative to locking down the entire country at the same time. This is basically localized lockdown, powered by people locking themselves in, not the other way around. You know, like normally the lockdown is the government comes, it depends what country you're in, but in some lockdowns, the government says no exit. And that's because the people want to exit. This one is just, you know, it's optional. If you don't want to die, you can be careful. This doesn't necessarily stop the whole thing. You need to put this together with all kinds of other measures. But it's extremely exciting that there's a new mechanism, a new way to also reduce what's called R. I don't know if any of you guys do mathematical biology or anything like that, but the R is like how many people get infected from each sick person. Every method of reducing R helps because you want to drop R to be less than 1, and then you win. One way of dropping R is like masks or social distance or whatever, and here's a new way. And the fun thing is that this thing this way did not exist before the smartphone. Because what we're doing is we're able to relay anonymous information at long distances. I just told you that. Okay, that was the new idea. Believe it or not, for a pandemic that affected about 7 billion people worldwide, there's actually no one else who thought of this. I know this because we spent a year and a half talking to governments, media, newspapers, scientists, and this is actually a new idea. But I'm hoping that you guys can, I hope everyone's thinking, who could have thought of that? If you do graph theory, by the way, if you do combinatorics, this is the first thing you think of. Like combinatorics, or if you do algorithms, you're always doing like a number of steps between things, right? And actually, if you want to think about it, what's really going on? I know there's some people here who study math. We just decided to switch the metric space. That sentence makes sense? I don't know if you've taken that math class yet. But it's basically the way we measure the distance between points. It used to be that everyone measured distance between points by kilometers. And they would make apps that would tell you, new infection, 2 kilometers from you. That's not that useful. To know the new infection is somebody who frequently spends time with someone, who frequently spends time with you. Oh boy, I'm staying home. Does that make sense? Even if their home is 10 kilometers away from you. So this is what's relevant. Okay, right. So that was the first part, coming up with the idea. The second part is how to get the idea out. And I'm sharing this because for a lot of us, especially I was doing a lot of theoretical math for a long time, we would just get ideas and we would write papers. I actually did write this out. I put it on archive, ARXIV. But it didn't work. People didn't actually pay attention to that. I even talked about it on my YouTube channel. I posted about it on social media. I put it everywhere I could, and it didn't work. And eventually I decided to try to get this out to newspapers. Here's a story all about that. So I tried to get this out to newspapers. So when I reached out to newspapers, unfortunately they wouldn't publish because they said you need to actually have a famous disease expert say it's a good idea, or else they don't trust this, so they won't publish it. And they didn't consider that math degree would give you the expertise to do it. So I had to go find famous disease experts. I couldn't get any to talk to because they were all busy handling the pandemic. And I didn't know them. So then the next thing I did is I went and talked to my friends who were scientists. I had friends who were scientists. And the good thing is during the pandemic they were willing to chat because there's nothing else to do anyway. So as I was talking, on average, a scientist on average took only 5 minutes to understand the idea. And then would say, oh, this is interesting, more people should know about it. And then I asked them, could you please then introduce me to 3 more of your friends who are also scientists, and encourage them to talk to me. 3 because on average one of them doesn't reply. But do you know what happens if every call you have with a scientist leads to 2 more calls? I made my own virus, R equals 2. Right, I'm just showing you, by the way, I'm a math geek, all right? I'm working on a real problem. I'm thinking about it with this math way. About how do I get my way through? I need to use the math to understand what's my blockage point, and the blockage point was not getting people to know. Okay, that ended up getting all these scientists to know. That's why I ended up by spring 2021 talking to scientists all over the place. And I even found myself giving talks at research group meetings in departments I never go to, like public school, public health. Previously, I was just talking in math departments about math, but now this is new. Okay, so by the spring 2021, a lot of scientists knew. But then, unfortunately, that wasn't enough, because I was actually trying to make more impact, and the scientists, as you start to know more scientists, you get to hear more scientists complaining about how the government and the politicians didn't listen to the scientists. So the scientists were not happy that they had all these recommendations and the government still did whatever it did. This is true in many countries. Many countries this was happening. So then I realized I need to do something that gets into media, I need to do something that involves government. I was talking to cities then. And as I was talking to cities, what I found out is that the city or the country or whatever would usually not be comfortable trying the idea because they would say, we don't have any expert researchers and no one's ever used this technique before. This is different from everything else. So how about you get someone else to do it first? Get a different city to go first. You know what happens when every city says, get a different city to go first. That's just called mathematical induction without a base case. I think I can say that in this community. Is that fair? Yeah. It's just like, no one doing that, nothing happens. So then I was just thinking, oh no, what do I do? I need to break through somehow. How can I do this? I need to find some government somewhere where there might be somebody who has enough power, who actually is like smart, knows a lot of science, maybe math. What should I do? Who can I reach out to? The Prime Minister of Singapore. So I looked up his email address, and I sent him an email, and it didn't work. Because if you email the Prime Minister, you don't get the Prime Minister. You get a reply from the Secretary saying, thanks for suggesting the idea, but the Prime Minister is too busy to work on your idea. Oh, that didn't work. Then I tried more things. Then I said, okay, well, I'm a graph theorist, so I like to think about networks. So I said, maybe, since the Prime Minister is a math genius, maybe he knows the Singapore Math Olympiad coach. As you see, all of us Math Olympiad coaches know each other, right? All the national Math Olympiad coaches know each other. So I said, the Singaporeans, look, this guy's a math genius. Not this guy, the Prime Minister is a math genius, right? So maybe he knows the Singaporean coaches. So I reached out to Singaporean coaches. Unfortunately, they didn't know the Prime Minister. I told them, you guys should, we probably get more funding. Because he would support you guys like crazy. You know, he's really, really good at math. Okay, too bad that didn't work. But I did learn one thing from this experience. Prime Minister of Singapore used social media. So I need to get through somehow to him, not the secretary. I need him. He would understand the math. So I was following him on social media and know what's going on. And the breakthrough happened in October 2021. By the way, I'm telling you these timelines because if you go to the research, it's actually the same. Actually, the philosophy here that I'm just using the same research mentality. Do a hard problem, try everything it takes. It might take over a year to solve your problem. That's what happens in the world of research. Anyway, I'm used to that because that's what I was doing when I was doing the pure mathematics research. Anyway, October 2021 breakthrough. The breakthrough happened when on one night, for me it was 1 a.m. My local time zone on a Saturday. That was 2 p.m. Where he was in Singapore. I saw that there was a post by the Prime Minister, and he said, unfortunately we used to have no COVID cases, but now we do, because the Delta variant is very infectious, and there are new restrictions for all of Singapore. That's when I thought, maybe now you might want a way of controlling pandemics. So I posted some comment underneath saying this idea. I also added that I'm the quadratic equation guy. Okay, I didn't use those exact words, but something like that. And then I went to bed, okay? Because these kinds of things that I do, and that most people in research and most people who try to do hard things do, when you try to do something hard, you will just fail over and over and over again. But that's okay. You need to try as hard as you can, give it the hardest swing, and then take a rest, because tomorrow you're going to swing again. So I did, I went to bed. I woke up the next morning and found out it had blown up, because the Prime Minister of Singapore had seen it. And he even replied, something very short, something like, this is an interesting idea. We should have our government technology unit look into it. Singapore's government technology unit is pretty sophisticated. And so that's good. But the most important part is what happened with the algorithms. Because on Facebook, if the guy with the blue verified check mark replies to the comment that someone made on his post, do you know what happens to that comment? He goes. By the time I woke up, hundreds of Singaporeans have reacted to this comment. And it got big. It flew all the way up. And that's what caused our breakthrough. That got us into the national newspaper of Singapore, called the Straits Times. That's their new newspaper. It's like the New York Times of Singapore. And why it got into the newspaper is because it got so many people talking about it, looking at it, that the journalists finally decided to go and take a deep dive. Remember I said the journalists are not experts in this subject area? But since this had reached such a high profile, they said, okay, let's go and get to the bottom of this. So they went and talked to me. I said, what's your idea? Tell me about this. I talked to them. And they said, okay, thanks. We'll decide what to do. Maybe you'll see the article later. You know what they did next? You know what investigative journalists do? If there's a new idea proposed by somebody, and they say, okay, we're going to think about it, they're not going to think about it. They don't know how to think about it directly. I'm not saying they're dumb, it's just that you can't know how to think about everything. What would you do if you were a journalist trying to figure out is this legit or not? What would you do? Sorry. Okay, sure. Maybe you're not journalists. Okay, I'll tell you what they do. They go ask all of the actual experts that they trust, like at National University of Singapore, famous disease experts. They go ask famous disease experts, what do you think of this idea? The good thing is I'd already talked to a lot of the famous disease experts. Remember the exponential growth earlier? So it's not like they're my friends. Science is not about friends. Science is about truth. But people actually understand. And so finally, when this thing came out, the article is balanced, and it said something which is exactly what we wanted. It said that for COVID, this is probably not useful. Because if COVID is coming closer and closer, most people are not going to run for the hills. Because they will not say, like, oh no, it's 50-50 lethal. But the article went on to say that some famous disease experts said, like, for other future pandemics, this could be quite useful. That was our goal. Our goal was not to make it so that you have to carry around the COVID app for the next 2 decades. The goal was to make it so that whoever is handling the next outbreaks, they use this app. Remember, okay? After we got this into the national newspaper of Singapore, shortly after, it got into the national newspaper for Australia. It's called ABC News. ABC News. That one happened because the Australian scientists told their newspaper. It wasn't even us telling it. The Australian scientists told it. This is what happens when you have a out-of-control infection. Does that make sense? There was an out-of-control infection in the scientific world, which is a good kind of infection, and it bubbled up there. And around that time also, we got it into a US paper called the Washington Post. That was because it got into Bloomberg, which got into the Washington Post. And then randomly, a little bit after that, I got an email from the White House in the United States, the person in charge of the future pandemic strategy, to discuss these kinds of concepts that we had for controlling pandemics. I even ended up talking to the people at Apple and Google who are responsible for that thing, the people in charge of that. So, I don't work on this anymore. The reason I don't work on this anymore is because we hit the end. Hit the end means went all the way to wherever the people, like even the ones in Apple and Google who are putting this in, reached all the way to that point. And it's reached to the point where there will be a future lethal pandemic. It will probably be within 20 years, unfortunately. And also, it probably will be that at that time, every app in the world that controls pandemics, made by every country, since this is now widely known, it's probably going to tell you a number. Not just a count, a number, like 5. It's an obvious idea, but they're probably going to tell you a number. When you see that number on your app in 20 years, now you know where that came from. Because this is what I did for like 2 years during the pandemic. Okay, but what do I do now? I stopped working on that. And if you are a faculty member, you like research because it's fun. You like thinking about things. You like trying to make new things because it's fun. You don't just go and say, aha, look at all my nice papers I've published. They are sitting there. I can stare at them. No, that's not it. And anyone who works, who's passionate about their work, the work is the fun part, not just looking at what's being done. That's boring. Okay? So I just use this as a content for talk, so let's be talking about innovation at this point. And instead, what I use for my real work, I went back to work on helping build ways to teach people how to think. I wanted to do that because hopefully by now you can see the idea itself is actually pretty simple. And so how could it be that people didn't think of this idea? It's because actually the knee-jerk reaction of lots of people who are making apps was to say, oh, it looks like the other people are all making apps. There's an app for Singapore. It does this. Oh, there's not an app for Australia yet. Let's do exactly what Singapore did and sell it to Australia. There's a whole article about that in ABC News. I think Australia spent like $10 million and it got them to track 6 cases. Or something really small. Right? So 6 confirmed cases. It was a very, very big embarrassment, basically. Right? But basically what happened is a lot of people were running copycat to go and sell $1 billion contracts to governments. That's the difference. So I prefer teaching people how to think instead of how to copy. And now, this is what got me to really focusing harder on education, because that's how we build an entire group of people who think. So again, I also do coach the US language team, so this is important, how to be able to scale up education, specifically education to teach how to think. Let me be more specific. When I say teach how to think, my pedagogy, or the way I like to teach, is to say, here's a problem, math problem. Nobody knows how to do it. And you brainstorm ideas, and tell me the ideas. And I will use your ideas to solve the problem your way. Not my way. My way will be whatever your way is. Oh, if we don't have enough ideas yet to solve, let's brainstorm more. Or maybe I start thinking about your way and trying to make your way work while we're talking. And then we end up showing that your ideas actually work. This is actually a pretty strong statement of like how a certain way of educating. Okay? Again, the lesson plan, what's the lesson plan? The lesson plan is called I should know everything that we're teaching. And my lesson plan is called make sure I slept enough last night. You got your cup of coffee and got ready to think. Because we're going to now handle whatever ideas get thrown and cook a lesson on the spot using those ideas. This is actually well suited for enrichment classes. By the way, I should say, we have people here who work on how to educate on large scales. There are different types of tools, different types of interventions needed for different purposes. But if you want to also teach people who are in the top 10% of their class, who are able at that point to go and have the luxury of thinking about how to innovate. And by the way, they might be the innovators in their country for the next generation. If you want to build that, we need to have some way of actually grabbing them. And this is actually a different teaching style. I want to emphasize that. Of course you need everyone to know how to do add, subtract, multiply, divide, solve equations, trigonometry, all of that. Got to cover all those. But you also need some of your population that can think of the new ideas and run with them. So you've got to teach them somehow. Do you know what makes it so hard to teach these classes? Do you know what makes it so that there aren't as many of these classes as there are people in the top 10% in the world, in their regions? There's a resource that's missing. The people. There aren't enough people. There aren't enough people to go and deliver these lessons, especially if they're after school. You know, teachers are really very busy. Teachers are busy during the whole day. Here comes more, right? And it's after school usually, this kind of thing. I've come up with another solution that solves this. So the way this works is that I noticed there was another problem at the same time that needed solving. If you can see by now, I like finding win-win situations. I like doing game theory. I like making everyone get what they want, and somehow it hopefully works. That's the pandemic control. But over here, I found there's another problem. The other problem I found that needed solving was that there are a lot of really brilliant high school math students, college math students, who could improve their communication skills. When I say improve their communication skills, I have a very, very high bar. I don't mean you can explain a math problem to somebody who's forced to listen. I mean you can get anyone to pay attention to what you're saying. That is a very high-end skill that previously was not really taught to math people as part of the curriculum. When I went to college, I went to Caltech, we had to take math communication as part of my degree. Math communication was go to the chalkboard, explain something clearly, make sure you understand. Right? That's what communication was. I'm going for something much harder, which is magnetize. Win over people. Oh, how do you do that? Well, I'll tell you, I started a program for these, they're actually almost all high school students. So we have this for all these high school students. And the program that I run for them, we find high school math geniuses, like from these math contests. They really can do anything. They can think, they have the dynamism. And then I hire professional comedians, actors, and actresses to teach them how to be interesting. This is actually really fun. I interview actors and actresses now as I hire them for this. When you spend time with actors and actresses, you develop a real appreciation for the fact that they can get you interested in them. In fact, they're so good that they could even get you be locked in to listen to something that's not true, because that's their job. That's their job. They're specialists. So what I said is, what if we just learn from them, right? By the way, this was inspired by me taking classes. I took drama classes at some point. They were actually improv comedy classes, improvisation comedy classes. I took those when I was 35. It changed my life. And so I'm now do this to go and help all of these people learn. All right? And now, okay, suppose everyone's learning these skills. Well, you can't learn these skills just by watching. What do you need to do? You need to try. Okay? You can talk about something. What do you think people who are already really good at math would be very comfortable talking about? Math. So now that solves this problem, because then they live stream live video math classes to the people trying to learn how to think. And the quality level is like something that was never there in the world before. Let me show you what this looks like. I'll show you a 1-minute video clip of what we end up making. Because I like to not just do theory, I like to also make it. Okay? So this is a 1-minute video. I'm going to turn this off. This is a 1-minute video clip of a class where middle school students open a Zoom. And on Zoom, they see 2 high school students talking to each other and talking to them. And it looks and sounds like this.
So, as we were saying, they still get a great from by age. And then, now seeing this, since they go at the same speed, the green one goes here at the same time the red one goes there. And then 20 times 2 gives you 40. Because if it takes 20 minutes for green to go here, from the first one to the right one, at 60 miles per hour, 20 minutes is 20 miles. And then this is also 20 miles. Awesome. Oh, I mean, Audrey, do you have anything else to add? I think I'll do the solution plan.
Yeah, it's really good. And one of the better things about that solution is that you actually don't really need to know how fast the trains are traveling. You can just use the symmetry to sort of So yeah.
I actually like that you point out symmetry, because symmetry is always cool to see. And I think being able to see it in problems like this makes it more fun and also like makes it more fun. But without further ado, Professor Loh, is there another way to do this problem?
But I'm trying to do that. There would be another way to do this question as well.
That's what we did to Zoom math class, by the way. If you ever had to learn math on Zoom, you know what that usually looks like, right? And that's not actually the teacher's fault. It's because when we had to use Zoom, we had no time to really prepare for it, right? I don't know how it was here, but over in Carnegie Mellon, we basically found out that we are going to teach online next week. And they said, there's this thing called Zoom. Nobody really knows how to use it, but we will figure it out by next week. Yes, it's not anyone's fault that they had to do that. But now that we are doing this many years in, we just went and thought, what should you do? How should you re-cook everything to make it so that you solve the biggest problem on Zoom, called the students aren't paying attention? Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you know. Yeah, Zoom. There's everybody in the room has a black rectangle, white text, and they are watching YouTube. Is it right? So I said, okay, there's a big problem here. We need to figure out how to actually solve online teaching if we're going to make this entire thing work. If you notice, there are things we use here. First of all, they can draw on the screen. That makes us able to make their face big. And then you can see that they're smiling. That's because the drama coach is helping them to be as engaging as possible. By the way, when we run these classes, we are the only people in the entire world who run online math classes, online any classes, where there are teachers. And we also have a professional drama coach, like an actor or actress, in every single class. Yeah, but what is this? Nobody does that. Usually you have one teacher teaching the students, and that one teacher just wishes they had 5 hands. Yes, because that's how the life was. Instead, no, we have the 2 teachers. First of all, the 2 teachers, they can trade off between each other. It's so much easier to keep track of everything. And furthermore, there's the drama coach. But the drama coach, her camera is off to the students, to the learners. They don't even know the drama coach is there because that's not for them. The drama coach is just watching the high schoolers, or the people who are doing the teaching. And she actually has a parallel video file. All of our people have an equipment kit we send them, has 2 monitors. And so the high school students, while they're teaching, they actually can see what they're sending to the classroom, and they can see the drama coach too. You know what I mean? It's just like you can have 2 parallel things. The drama coach and the high school students, they're all in this common Zoom meeting, which is the class, and then there's the secret Zoom meeting, which just has the open twice at the same time. There's this other one where it's just a special little room with the 2 high school students and the drama coach. The drama coach is making faces and signals and comments and all these kinds of things, helping them to improve how they actually are delivering. They're telling them all kinds of useful tips, like your posture, communicate something, and like open your eyes a bit more sometimes, right? Or yes, you aren't saying anything, but you should at least smile when you're not saying anything, so people don't think you're mad at them, right? I'm just saying all of these things. These are all things that are really useful, and who knows these things? The people who do it for a living. Does that make sense? So basically, we're having the expertise from the people who do performing arts for a living, and that expertise is coming into here. By the way, the reason this whole thing scales, this is actually the biggest thing I work on now, because this is a solution that can scale up to solve this advanced thinking training for entire populations. Why? Because the incentives are low. What's in it for the high schooler? First of all, the high schooler, by the way, doesn't pay. They get paid. The reason they get paid is because these classes are not free. Education, by the way, is not free, usually. Actually, it's just not free anyway, because even if it's public education, someone pays, right? So there's a cost for this. Just that what we do, I'm a social entrepreneur, so what we do is then we take that and we put that payment across to the high school students and the drama coach, and then the management of the entire thing, of course. Okay, now think about it from the perspective of a high school student. What do they got? You get to learn these skills. You get to end up living, like this, which is actually really useful in life. You win in life. In America, this is particularly useful because in America, if you want to get into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, your personality and the interview are a key part of the application process. It's not just your test scores. Harvard, so surprisingly or not surprisingly, rejects tons of international mathematical gold medalists for not having enough of the other skills. Gold medalists. Okay? That's why they all go to MIT. I'm serious, because they get into MIT, but they don't get into Harvard, Stanford, and Princeton, and Yale as much. Okay, so what I'm saying is there's all these people who actually want to solve the problem, those high schoolers, they need to solve that problem. But just imagine you wanted to find a professional drama coach. How do you do that? You can't. Actually, we run the only program in the whole world that makes it efficient for them, and we pay them for it. Wait, there's actually more. For the high school students, they also get to meet other people who are also like nice and passionate about math, like from all around the country and different parts of the world. I mean, in some sense, it's even a dating service. Okay, well, maybe I should be more careful not to say that explicitly, but we introduce people to each other. We're building gigantic networks of these nice, good at math, interested in communication people all over the US and all over the world. So suddenly, this is going nuts. We have tons and tons of high school students who are all trying to join this, because in the US, when they're trying to get into university, this actually helps them. We currently have 0 trying to join this from China, because if they do this, that reduces the chance they get into university. You know why? Because in China, getting into university is based on a test. This is not helping you for the test. Does that make sense? So I'm basically saying I always operate on incentive alignment. I want to see who benefits from what. And I saw there was a gigantic group of people who have high-speed internet access, which is important for the video streaming, right? There's a huge population of people who actually benefit from this. Bang! So that works. Drama people, they get jobs. That works. Middle schoolers, they get to learn how to think using a resource base that just never existed before. This thing scales like crazy. In fact, we already have like 100 high school students in this pipeline doing this. It's easily going to grow to 10,000 because that's the number of people in the US already who would directly, selfishly benefit from joining this thing. 10,000 to 200,000. That scale is exciting. Because the things that I work on, I don't only want to work on the top 6 students in the US, that's the International Math Olympics. I'm trying to go and really change how people think. What does that have to do with Philippines? Well, actually, the reason I'm here is because as part of this entire experience, there is part of the teaching that is also based on the text track that was going on right here during the class live. And that does not require an insanely fast internet connection. And so, for example, we already have students from Ateneo. That's just who I happen to connect to first. It's not like we only like Ateneo. But we happen to have undergraduate students from Ateneo doing internship where they are on our live teaching off-camera tool, if that makes sense. Because every single class, the way we make our classes work is we have the on-camera and off-camera components. The requirements for each role are just whatever it takes to make the role work, if that makes sense. And so we actually have that. So we have students who are involved in this inside this entire system. That's why I came to the Philippines, because I wanted to better understand the ecosystem. As soon as I have people from a population working with me, I want to know what are your hopes, what are your dreams, how can I go and help to make a win-win situation. That's what I understand. The other place where this can interact with the Philippines is that as these high school students are getting ready, trying to reach this stage of polishedness, like these are good, these two are good on the screen. It usually takes about 20 hours of training of them actually practicing and teaching for them to get to this stage. During those 20 hours, we are currently wasting that resource. And that makes me sad. What I mean by wasting that resource is, we have some people from our team sitting in the classroom, online classroom, with them as they're training, listening to this wonderful class about thinking, and pretending to be students asking questions. Since we're not doing this in the Philippines, I'm happy, I've already been offering, like I was just at Philippine Science High School, and I've been offering to people in the Department of Education and so on, that if there are 6th or 7th grade students in the Philippines who are highly motivated and want to join those classes during the training teaching time for free, they can. Which means you would get to learn from people like that just like 20 hours less, like 20 hours early. Where, by the way, they were already really good. It's just that our policy is people don't hit the screen for the regular classes until they are so good that we would just tell anyone that these are the best in the world. That makes sense. But why this is exciting is if we get up to 10,000, if we get up to 10,000 on the high school side, we'll be able to be delivering lesson units for 100,000 people in the Philippines for free. For free. This happens to be on the training side. Of course, we can also do it for pay, but why pay? Well, okay, I shouldn't say why pay. Some people choose to pay. That's Saudi Arabia. That's where I'm going next. Like my flight is going to Saudi Arabia after this, and they happen to be interested. I'm not interested. They happen to currently already be taking the classes. But the way this works is that different countries have different things they're interested in. And so some countries, they are interested in this level. And the question is not really how much it costs, but does it exist? You know what I mean? There are places in the world where it's just like, can you just show me the best possible thing? Okay, great. How much does it cost? Oh, okay, that's reasonable. Right? That's how that works. But then the way we are is once we have a significant base in the country, well, I like to help people. And so, why not? We can go and do something for free. And hopefully that's going to help. Hopefully that's going to help everyone around here. I should say, why do I have a soft spot in the Philippines? It's again because I met some really nice people from the Philippines before. When I did international math Olympiad stuff, I met nice people from the Philippines, and I was impressed. As I was mentioning during our chit chat, I said I was impressed that the people seem to be, on the most part, like hardworking and nice people. And so I said, okay, this is nice. I'd like to support this. And then if we can go and help to give further skills at large scale, well, hopefully that's going to be some help. Yeah. With that, this is a good point, I think, to take a break. Because we have until 5, and we have a 5-minute break. And afterwards, I'm happy to do any Q&A about anything. Does that sound good? Yeah. Let me give my back to you.
Yeah, so we'll take a 5-minute break. You can go to the toilet or you can have coffee outside. There is some small snacks so that you can eat for free. So we'll start again. It's 4:05 by my watch, so we'll start at 4:10. Okay.